Good morning, Greene County. I think it's 8:12, so it's probably a good time to start. There's a lot of information I've packed into this today, so as usual, I'm just going to ramble on, and hopefully we'll get through it. But you know, we put together a lot of information for you because we care about what we present to you, and we were actually just changing numbers this morning, so we're not ready yet for the budget, but you know, that's part of it. If we were ready for the budget already, it'd be like, well, why do you even have a budget office? Anybody can do it. And maybe anybody can do it, especially you guys when you're all educated on what's going on in the county, which is the whole goal of this. But anyway, let's quit rumbling on. As usual, the whole purpose of the huddle is to know and teach the rules. And we do that with our scoreboard and talking about the scoreboard, and it leads into budget. And that's the main thing we'll talk about today is budget. But first, we'll go through our four major funds. And of course, our critical numbers, Greene County general revenue cash. And by our plan, we want to end 2024 with $25,476,374. So that we can, with that plan, ensure that we meet what we told the voters we would when they gave us that new tax in 2017 and be able to continue to make our bond payments. So looking at the scoreboards, let's just get into it. And first one up is Road and Bridge. And as always, our little graphs are kind of changing. What was unique in August is it was like March, one of our 3 pay period months. And so you didn't receive 3 paychecks in your banking account, but the county booked 3 paychecks in August. And so you can see that's why the green actual line predominantly went down. However, we have an anomaly with our normalized line in that it jumped quite a bit. And the reason it jumped was because when we normalized, what we were doing was taking accounts that either 3 months behind pace or accounts that were 3 months ahead of pace. So August is 2/3 of the year through the county, so 66.67%. Well, if you add 25% of that, you get up over 91%. And one of our main revenue sources that we're watching that we get that's early on the green line is personal property tax. Well, personal property tax is about 91% of budget. And so it stopped being normalized because it got within that 25% band. And so all of property tax ended up getting recognized in August, all the remaining. So you've got not only August, but the other 4 months. So there's 5 months worth of property tax now that's no longer being normalized, that's being recognized in the blue line. And so that's why the normalized line has gone up, because the activity is within 25%. And so we believe that's going to be the high for the normalized balance for Road and Bridge. And now as they do heavier spending with remaining capital items and road materials, road construction, bridge replacement, the green line and the blue line will both come down, and the blue line will probably come down a little bit faster towards the end, and we'll see them meet somewhere over that black line. The black line, of course, is the budgeted line, but right now, Road and Bridge normalized value is a whopping $8,525,000 better than budget. We can go to the next fund. We have the assessment fund. And as you can see here, the behavior is just tracking right along with budget. They had 2 months where they were a little bit below budget, and now they're $73,380 above budget again. And as you can see, the 3 pay period month is not as distinct in this, but that's where we have the hit going down from July to August. And we just expect to see that green line come down and meet the blue line hovering right around budget, doing a little bit better than budget. Very, very well, it's behaving like we expect it to. So it's all very good. This takes us to the Law Enforcement Sales Tax Fund. And this fund, as you can see, is more reliant on payroll. There's a lot more personnel in this fund compared to total balance than the other 2 funds we just looked at. And so the 3 pay period impact that you see happening between July to August kind of mirrors what you see between February and March as far as those dips go. So we seen much more stark moves, but right now normalized is doing about $222,000 better than budget, which is what we like to see, because that means GR is not going to have to transfer as much to cover. But when we do that transfer, we'll see that green line come right up to the blue. But that won't happen until the end of the year. So we expect the green line to be significantly below the normalized and the budget. And that's why we do normalized, so that we can see how we're actually doing. That takes us to GR. And so with GR, again, you see that 3 pay period month has been a very stark down. And again, it kind of mirrors what happened between February and March. And so that's the main impact to what we see on actual cash for GR. And GR, just like Road and Bridge, has property tax revenues. And so that property tax revenue also got within the 25% range. And so it stopped being normalized. So we've recognized 5 months worth of property tax in just August. And not only that, but we also get the 1% collector's commission. And so that large revenue figure is also being normalized. And so even though we had a three pay period month that reduced our actual cash quite a bit, by recognizing the remaining 5 months on personal property and collector's commission, real property, all of those levy-based taxes, we ended up having normalized income remain about the same. But again, this is going to be the high point for our fund balance going forward, and we expect that blue line to come down and meet that green line. But right now we're about $4,661,000 above budget. You'll see later in our little forecast that we're expecting to be about $1 million better than budget at the end of the year. So that's really the monitoring of our current budget situation. That takes us into what do we do with these numbers? And of course, that's where we roll into next year's budget and the budget scenario. One thing we want to look at, though, is what we do in the huddle is very important in determining our projected cash balance. And so here, we've got our numbers that have been used for determining cash balance. And at 2023 right now, at the bottom, the red figure, you can see we believe that the 2023 ending cash balance is going to be $30,058,000. 2023 would normally be finalized by now, but the auditor and the outside auditor haven't finalized our numbers yet. Typically we'd see that happen in July, but there's been some delays. And so we're having to assume some things, which you'll see at the bottom there, transfers to be entered. We don't know whether or not those will happen, but that's what we're projecting will happen. But anyway, that takes us to an ending cash value of $30,058,000. Now that value ends up being $4,723,000 worse or lower than what we thought it would be at the time we did the 2024 budget. So when we made our decisions based on what we thought our cash value was, we made decisions based on a number that was about $4,723,000 better than what we've seen happen. And when we've tried to analyze and break that down, there's mainly two main categories on why that's happened. We thought there would be more ARPA spending at the end of 2023 than what happened, and we had backed that expectation out. And then the main part of it is in the last 3 months of the year and the next 4 months of the first part of the year, there were expenses for 2023 that were well over budget. In about 115 different accounts, there was spending over budget. And so that was items that we didn't account for. A few of those items were commission decision items to adjust the budget. And of course, when we do the budget, we're comparing it to just the beginning of the year budget, not the adjusted budget. And so there were some of those, but they ate into contingency. And so contingency was one of our main savings that go into that budget. So the main takeaway is 2023 ending cash is kind of a surprise to us compared to what we thought it would be. So when we go forward, we carry that 30,058 into our beginning balance for 2024, and then we actually look at what we did in the budget. So in the budget, we had a budgeted change of $5,500,000. That was our spend down that we thought we could spend at that time. And actually, the budget office believed that we had about $5,796,000 that we could spend down, and commission made choices that amounted to about $5,500,000. So they left some items on the table to ensure that we're financially sound. But when you look here, we have our adjustments that we're doing to the budget based on what we know now, and so we believe sales tax is going to be about $2,166,000 less than what we budgeted. Still more than last year, but less than what we budgeted. Federal boarding, we believe, is going to be about $877,000 less than what was budgeted. Vacancy, on the other hand, when we project forward our vacancy, we think vacancy is going to end up being about $2,321,000 in excess of what was budgeted. So that comes the other way and helps us. Now we have, in last year's budget, we approved $2,200,000 of expenditures to be reimbursed by ARPA, and we didn't designate those expenditures. So commission still hasn't had those designated yet, but when and if those get designated, that $2,200,000 can roll out of here. But until then, it's less cash than what we had anticipated, because those won't be reimbursed by ARPA unless those expenses are designated. The animal shelter, once again, we've put it in the budget, and Springfield's not ready for us to pay them that money, so that gets added back in. Running on down, you can see the utilities is about $417,000 better than what we budgeted. And then we have an unbudgeted sale of property that's going to add about $1,750,000 to cash. So all in all, our estimated change for the end of 2024 is about $4,400,000 or $4,500,000 if you round up. And so we're doing about $1 million better than what we expected. And so that's kind of goes along with what we've been saying in these huddles all year. We're doing better than we expected on our budget. It's just the surprise to the 2023 cash number that's giving some impact. So anyway, 2024, we expect our estimated ending cash balance to be about $25,604,000. And then we know that our 2025 ending balance for plan needs to be about $23,793,000. So when we look at, there we go. Our estimated ending balance for cash in 2024 is $25,604,000. By plan, we're supposed to be $25,476,000. So we're still doing better than plan by about $170,000. And that's money that will be excess balances that can go against next year's spending. It's just a lot smaller than what it's been the past few years, our savings against budget. And then we also have our planned spend down, which every year, according to plan, we have some money that we can spend down about $1,700,000. And so the total of the excess funds and the spend down, we have about $1,811,000 that can be excess spending over annual operations in 2025. If we take that $25,604,000 from the end of 2024 up to the beginning of 2025, then we can look at the requested budget. The requested budget actually has a change in cash from projected revenues, transfers, and expenditures of a negative $20,735,000. So when we take that requested change, then our ending cash balance for 2025 is $4,870,000. And of course, by plan, we need to have $23,793,000. So that means budget's job, our job, is to try and find $18,923,000 to balance ourselves, to balance our requests against plan. So we've got 20,734,000, which is the change in requested, but that's going to net out to 18,923,000. That's going to be our challenge for this budgeting year. So let's look at both of those numbers. When we go to the first one, this is going to show you how the requested budget lines up against the 2024 budget. So when you look at taxes, our taxes are actually $351,000 better than the 2024 budget. We go to intergovernmental receivables, and in 2024, it was $10,516,000. In 2025, that request is adding up to about $4,004,000. That's a decrease of $6,129,000. The majority of that, $6,113,000 of that, is ARPA receipts. We expect to receive the lion's share of ARPA by the end of this year because we have to have everything committed or paid for by the end of this year internally for ARPA. So that $6,129,000 is really kind of those revenues are offset by expenses that we've either incurred in 2024 already or in previous years. So when we get down to the other revenues, there's a decline of about $1,975,000 there. And when we look at that, $1,490,000 of that is federal board. Unfortunately, it's just not a situation that we could predict. And we were going from about 300 inmates a day down to about 260 inmates a day, federal inmates a day in our budget request. And so that's a decline of $1,490,000. The next largest item is interest of about $240,000, which, a couple years back, to think that interest could decline $240,000 would be pretty surprising. But the environment has been so good and Justin's been so great at investing that our interest numbers have been pretty substantial. But obviously, as your balances go down, you have less to invest. And there's a pretty good prediction that our interest rates on average for next year are going to decline. And so with those two things coupled together, it's not surprising that our interest income is going to reduce by about $240,000. Justin, did you have anything to add on that, or is that pretty good?
Yeah, the Fed already started. They cut rates by a 0.5% just last week.
Yep.
And so that even escalated the trajectory of what the market thinks that they're going to do and continue to bring that rate down over the course of next year.
Absolutely. And then the final category is in requested budget, we have resource management fees going down by about $150,000. That's actually going to bring us much more in line with what we expect to receive. So that's a good adjustment to see happen. However, it's just part of the totals that we see here. So in all, revenues are estimated to go down about $7,800,000. When we look at net transfers, in 2024, transfers, which we fund some discretionary accounts, but the main portion of this is bond funding, was about $18,436,000. Now in 2025, the request ends up balancing out to about $20,113,000. Bonds go down by about $500,000 a year. So what we have here, this increase of about $1,678,000 is actually because the LEST transfer has gone up from about $1,700,000 to $4,142,000 to balance LEST based on the requests. So that's a big item for us to look at, is that LEST transfer amount, which is more than double, a lot more than double than what it typically is. When we look at personnel expenditures about $4,500,000 more. That's to be expected with the COLA and STEP increases, which right now there's a a 1% COLA for the beginning of the year and a step at mid-year that are factored into these numbers. Is that a Candy Crush thing? I'm just joking. Kidding. P1! When we look at operations, in operations in the 2024 budget, we're about $22,800,000, and the requested is about $21,400,000. So we see a significant decline there. We have election costs that's down more than $600,000. However, the big offset that we'll see there and in other items, but it nets out here, is those ARPA expenditures that are related to the $6,113,000 in ARPA revenue. And then capital, we see that going up by about $2,050,000 in requests. Our projected savings, which at this point in time is typically just contingency, that's declined about $706,000, but also contingency is based off of revenues. And with our revenues declining mainly because of ARPA, we don't have to fund as much contingency, which that just means we don't get the same projected savings that we're looking at. So all in all, our current change, we've gone from that, the requested is at $20,735,000 that we talked about earlier, which should be about $1,811,000. Our change from last year's budget is about $15,230,000 more in expenditures. So going on to that second number that we were looking at after the spend down is included, the $18,923,395. That was our need to balance. So there's actually at this point, there's some pretty easy things to identify and put in there. One of them is our numbers don't have vacancy in it yet. So when we look at vacancy, the GR budget, we think vacancy is going to be about $3,800,000. And then because of the transfer, we think LEST vacancy is going to be about $436,000. Now, even though the majority, all of the commitments have to be made to ARPA for the county by the end of this year, there's going to be some projects that continue into next year. They just have to be committed with POs or contracts. And so we still believe that we're going to receive about $1,750,000 in ARPA revenue on projects that will eventually be reimbursed. And so we have that coming out. And then we've looked at real and property taxes, and we believe from the number in revenue that we're going to have in the requested budget, we're actually going to bump that up by about $320,000 for recommended budget. So we're accounting for that there. Our Eden system is out of date, and there's going to be a replacement of that Eden system probably starting late next year. The $513,701 was an amount that was put in by the IS department. The auditor also put in an amount of about $533,000. That represents half of the projected cost of replacing the Eden system, but it was in two places. And so we backed it out of one place and just left it in the auditor's request total. And then we believe the public administrator's office will do better in fees than what they projected in their budget. We haven't talked to them about that yet, but we've thrown that in there. So that takes us from $18,923,000 needing to balance down to $12,085,000 needing to balance. When we look at what the increases were in people's lines, if you don't look at decreases and you look at only the lines that increased from the previous year, that's what you see here. And so we've got the prosecuting attorney requesting about $493,000 in increases on his lines that have increases. The sheriff about $1,505,000. The auditor's office $548,000. The collector about $98,000. The county clerk about $69,000. Public administrator about $67,000. The recorder about $23,000. The treasurer's office about $17,000. Commission as a department about $30,000. The PIO about $21,000. Budget about $18,000. HR about $46,000 in increases. Purchasing 21,000, general services about 41,000 in increases, pretrial 11,000, medical examiner 51,000, IS about 490,000, OEM about 151,000, county administrator 19,000, building ops 273,000, resource management about 131,000, vehicles overall about $363,000 in increases. The health department about $605,000 in increase as a request, and then non-departmental items about $348,000 in increases. And then that takes us to the increases in LEST because of the transfer amount. The prosecuting attorney about $61,000 in increases there. Sheriff's Department another $349,000 in increases. Pretrial 5,000. Vehicles about $1,490,000 in increases over last year's budget, and non-departmental about $128,000. So in all, when you look at just the increased lines, that's a total of $7,471,000. So that takes that previous balance that we had of $12,085,000 down to $4,614,000. So even if we declined every single increased request in the budget, including the COLAs and steps, because those are in these numbers, we would still need to find and balance another $4,614,000 to keep us to plan. And again, a lot of that is that change in 2023 balance from what we expected. And that's how important this huddle is into getting the correct number for our cash balances. So another $4,613,000. But it's disturbing, but I want to make sure everybody realizes this is the budget office. So when we come with a presentation like this, it's always disturbing. So let's look at how it was last year compared to this year, okay? So in 2024, we had requested revenues of $93,800,000. Now requested revenues are $94,400,000. So it's actually better. When we look at net transfers, our net transfers in 2024 was using cash by $20,800,000. And right now it's $20,100,000. So better there. We look at expenditures, including those ARPA expenditures, was $99,086,000. The request this year, total expenditures are $98,100,000. So again, better than last year. When we look at projected savings and budget, that's the contingency account being added back in. Last year was $3,600,000. This year's $3 million. So it's a little bit worse than last year, but that's because we don't have to do as much contingency. So overall, the requested yearly net operations last year was a use of cash of about $22,500,000. This year it's about $20,700,000. So we are doing a lot better at this point when we look at that. Now, our prior year excess funds, at this point in time last year, we thought we had about $4,400,000 that we could spend down. Obviously, those numbers got reworked as we went through and ended up coming up to that $5,700,000, which Commission did $5,500,000 on. This year, at this point, we're at $1,811,000. So that's significantly different. And then we have the impact of vacancy. So vacancy add backs last year at this time was $3,800,000. This year it's $4,200,000. So vacancy again is better. But all in all, when you look at the difference in these results, we're at last year at this time, we're about $14,280,000 that we needed to find. This year we're at $14,693,000. So that's how important having an accurate cash number is. And so that's what we need your help with. Offices and departments, we're asking that you guys identify the lines where you're going to earn more money or spend less money than your 2024 budget amount so that we can build that into our cash number. Because every dollar that you save in your 2024 budget is going to get added to that $1,811,000. When we've done this, we've looked at all of the lines that were $100,000 and over, which isn't that many lines. And that's how we've got some of those adjustments that we've already talked about. But it's amazing how much all of those other lines add up to if we have somebody who knows what they're doing, knows what their expenses are going to be at the end of the year, can project, what's coming up to be able to get us information. So by getting that excess cash number to the most accurate number it can be, it's going to give us the best chance of having a 2025 budget that we can work with while protecting our future viability. So we're just asking that everybody, please review your numbers and let us know if you're going to do better on revenues than budget, or if there are some lines where your expenses are going to be less than budget, so that we can factor that in. And that will go a long ways towards the first step in fixing, the 14.6 million that we're kind of at, but that we know that we're really kind of at 12.84 million right now. So that's really what I have for you. And look at that. I've rambled through a lot of information, and we maybe have a minute left or two. Anybody have any questions or want to talk about a story that's going on in your office or department? Somebody's got stories back there, but probably not stories to share. But no, it's important that we all understand what's going on with the budget, and that we maintain and see what's going on with our operations, so that when our next budget runs around, we have the opportunity to do the best that we can for the county. So let's identify those excess cash needs so that the commission can make some good decisions for you. Justin?
So the animal shelter is not going to be spent this year?
Right. So that $1,450,000 is rolled forward yet again. I think we've had that $1,450,000 in the books every year since 2018. And we just keep waiting for the city to break ground on a place that they've chosen in order for us to meet for the stipulations in the contract to be met, for us to be able to pay it over. So that's just one of those unique situations that is kind of out of our control, and we just keep budgeting and waiting for the spending to actually happen. Anybody have anything else to add or mission? Well, we're going to let you go. Like I said, it's an interesting position we're in right now, but if last year tells us anything, it's something that we can work our way through. So y'all take care and have a good day.